So Blizzard recently released a video going over the endgame systems of Diablo 4, and a lot of people seemed to not like this video, and more specifically, they didn't like what was shown for Paragon boards. So even though I went over Paragon boards in my last video, I wanted to go over the system again in this video and go into as fine of detail as I can, because it seems like a lot of people don't have the actual information of what Paragon boards are. And this video is sitting right around a 50-50 like to dislike ratio, and you can normally chalk this up to it just being any trailer or officially released video by Blizzard, most of which get this type of review bombing. It just is what it is these days. But after reading the comments, a lot of people commented the same thing, and it was specifically about a piece of the Paragon board, which are normal tiles that just give you small increases to primary stats, and thinking that is what the entirety of the Paragon board is, and not knowing about the other options that are available in all of these different Paragon boards. So hopefully this will give you the information if you're somebody that thought the Paragon boards were only these small primary stat increases, because this is legitimately one of my favorite systems of Diablo 4. So Paragon boards are going to be the big character progression system in the endgame. You unlock these at level 50, and then you'll start obtaining 4 Paragon points for every time your character levels up. So going from 50 to 100, you're going to get 200 Paragon points, and then you're also going to be able to get some additional points from the renown system. But these points are capped. So unlike Diablo 3 Paragon, this is not an infinite progression system. There is a point where you're not going to get any more points. So you're going to actually have to make choices and try to optimize where you're putting these points for whatever build you're trying to create. Now, these boards are essentially a big checkerboard of different rarity of tiles that you progress through. And then once you get to one of the edges of the board, which are called gates, you then are able to slot in a new Paragon board on top of the one you're already on. And you're also able to turn any of these new Paragon boards, so you can start the new Paragon board at whichever side you want to. Then you progress through that one to whichever side you want to. Then you slap on a new Paragon board, and that's how you're going to be progressing throughout the system as you level up and get more points. Now, every one of these Paragon boards are class specific, and they're not random. They're specifically designed by developers. You're not going to be choosing between randomly developed boards. Now, these tiles that you're progressing throughout these different Paragon boards are split up into different rarities, just like gear pieces. You have normal tiles, magic tiles, rare tiles, and legendary tiles. Normal tiles are just primary stat increases, and this was the big complaint of how they showed off the Paragon boards, is that they were all just +5 to strength, willpower, intelligence, etc. And these are going to be the primary tile. There's going to be a lot more normal tiles than any other tile, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But these are going to be the primary things you're selecting to get to the more important and more substantial powers in the higher rarities. Then we have magic tiles that are usually found in clusters, and these are usually going to provide a more substantial and more varied set of stat increases. So maybe an increase to resistance, maybe a cooldown reduction to a specific ability, maybe an increase of damage to healthy enemies, and even very rarely you can get a more powerful version of normal tiles. So instead of like 5 strength, it could be 7 strength, but those do seem to be very rare. It's usually stats outside of your primary stats on magic tiles. And then we have rare tiles, and this is a big jump in complexity and how interesting these tiles are compared to the first two. And there's going to be around 5 rare tiles on every Paragon board, but with how they're designed, these aren't going to be something that you just want to go pick up every rare tile because they're more powerful, because there's actually certain stat thresholds you need to get all the power out of a rare tile. Now, one of the examples we've been given in the past is a rare tile for a barbarian, where at a baseline, you get 10 fury per kill, a decently strong effect by itself. But then its secondary effect requires you to have 175 strength and 120 willpower, and this will give you 8% increased fury. So this type of design not only makes rare tiles themselves pretty interesting, but it actually makes your selection of normal tiles a bit more interesting. Because if you need a certain amount of primary stats to actually unlock a secondary effect on these rare tiles, being optimal with your normal tile selection can actually give you a pretty large increase to your power once you go and get these different rare tiles throughout all the different Paragon boards. So this isn't going to be a straightforward selection process where you just go through these tiles, pick up the stronger tiles on your way, and then you go to the next board. That's not how this is going to work. You're actually going to have to plan out your way through all these different connected Paragon boards to get the most optimal stats and to get some of the more interesting effects. And then on top of that, you also have legendary tiles. Now there's going to be one legendary tile on every Paragon board except for the Paragon board you start with. So the first Paragon board you start with, it starts you in the center, so you can easily go to whichever corner to then select a new Paragon board to put on top of that. So that first board doesn't have a legendary power, but every board after the first has a legendary tile directly in the middle. And these legendary tiles are going to be very strong. An example we've gotten in the past is while your fury is above 50%, you deal 30% more damage. And even in this most recent endgame video, they give an example of another legendary tile, which is Cheap Shot. You deal 5% increased damage for each nearby enemy that is crowd controlled up to 25%. So these legendary tiles are very strong and usually have some gameplay element that is going to require you play in a slightly different way to get the most benefit from these. And going back to that Barbarian legendary tile where you need to be above 50% fury to do a lot more damage, this is going to actually change how you'd play a Barbarian. Normally, you would just get some fury and use the skill that costs fury right when you can. But with this, you may want to fill up your fury and then spam out your fury spender so at least the first couple get this 30% increase, or you may even want to create a build specifically around this to make sure you're always at very high fury to get this massive damage buff. These are going to change how you play your build or create your build in slight ways. Now, factoring in all these different tile rarities, I think the system is already decently complex and gives you quite a lot of options, but this isn't the most complex part of the Paragon system, because then we also have glyphs and sockets. So on all the different Paragon boards, there's going to be some empty tiles that you can go to, and these are sockets. And once you unlock these sockets, you can slot in glyphs inside of these sockets. Now, glyphs are going to be an obtainable item that you obtain like normal loot out in the game. We don't know exactly where these are specifically going to be from, but presumably you're going to be getting these like you get normal pieces of gear out in the world. And these are also going to be able to be leveled up, and they're also going to follow similar rarities to gear pieces or the Paragon tiles. And the basic idea of these glyphs is that these glyphs are going to empower all of the tiles in a specific radius and even add additional effects to all of these tiles. And we've had some examples in the past, first being a magic level 3 tile with a radius size of small, grants 30% bonus to all nodes within range. So if you have a bunch of strength nodes around the socket that you put this glyph in, now you're getting 30% more strength from all of those different tiles. But then we go up to a rare glyph that's also level 8. This has a radius size of medium, so this is going to affect more tiles. And the first effect is for every 10 dexterity purchased within range, you deal 13.5% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So now you're also getting increased damage to vulnerable targets depending on how much of these normal tiles you select in the area. This is also going to make these normal primary stat tiles be even more interesting, because the more of a specific stat you get in this radius, the stronger you're going to be in other areas. Then it has another effect which grants a 40.5% bonus to all nodes, buffing all nodes within range of this glyph. Then we have another rare tile, this one being at level 15. The radius size is large, so again affects even more tiles, and for every 10 willpower purchased within range, you deal 31.5% increased overpower damage. So again, similar to the last glyph, the more of a specific stat you have in this radius, the more overpower damage you're going to be dealing, meaning again, normal tiles become more interesting. But then the secondary effect of this one switches it up a little bit. This grants 4 strength for each willpower purchased within range. So now you're getting a bunch of strength for every willpower within range of this glyph, which if you add in all the other different tiles and systems we went over, can also affect a ton of additional tiles and glyphs on your other Paragon boards. Because say you're looking for a ton of additional strength to be able to get the special effect of one of the rare tiles, you could then go get a socket, put a glyph into it that gives you a bunch of additional strength in that area to then activate one of these other rare glyphs. So all of these systems, specifically in the Paragon board, are going to synergize with each other and make the system as a whole much more interesting, including the normal tiles that just give you base primary stats. And I think this system as it is already pretty interesting when you factor in all the different parts, and gives you quite a lot of options to create or augment different builds you're going with. This system is also made to be expanded upon, because we've already been told by developers of Diablo 4 that every new season they're going to be adding in more Paragon boards. So like we went over, after you get to one of the gates of the Paragon boards, you choose another Paragon board to attach to that. And there's going to be a handful of different Paragon boards available for every single class. And then with every new season, they're going to be adding more, presumably at least one Paragon board for every class. And I have a pretty big hunch that these new Paragon boards are going to be adding in more unique systems onto that specific Paragon board and trying to shore up some of the weaker sides of the current Paragon boards. Now, this is going to give you just a lot more options when creating your builds. There may be a new Paragon board that comes out on a season that has much better stats and options for your build, so you may want to take out one of your old Paragon boards you were using and slot in this new one, just giving you more options for your build. But then, like I mentioned, they're probably going to be trying to change some of the ways or add in some new features into the new boards, giving even more options or making it more interesting. And also keep in mind, this is only one piece of the puzzle of your overarching build. You're still going to have your class skill trees where you have the skills you want to choose and all the different passives throughout that tree. Then you're still going to have your gear, which goes all the way up to the unique rarity. That's going to have all these different effects and stats that can synergize with each other pretty heavily, even from some of the base legendary powers that we got to see in the beta. And then we attach on this Paragon system onto all of that. There are a lot of moving parts that are going to heavily change how builds work, depending on what stats you're going with, depending what skills you're going for, and depending on what Paragon boards you're choosing. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.